I was in Havana. The Pope was about to arrive for an island-wide tour. Early, the first morning I was there, I got a phone call from Tim Russert, our Washington bureau chief, and he said,
Tom, you aren't going to believe this. Guess what's happening here? Monica Lewinsky, White House intern, involved with the president as the accusation. People were abuzz in Washington about a real scandal involving the President of the United States.
This is a defining moment politically and legally for the president and for the nation.
I had no idea where it was going to end up. And this is the story that no one was going to turn off. I don't care how enlightened or intellectual or how reclusive they may have been, they wanted to hear every naughty detail about this story.
The full impact of it really didn't hit me until I walked into that briefing room.
You're saying no relationship?
I'm not going to parse the statement. You've got the statement I made earlier, and it speaks for itself. And I remember just thinking to myself, good Lord, where is this briefing going to go?
I think that the Monica Lewinsky affair was the first realization that we had of the effect of all these cable news outlets and all talk radio and everybody competing with everybody else. I call it the Big Bang. Used to have just these three planets in the evening sky at night, you know, ABC, NBC, and CBS. And we decided what was news. And now suddenly stuff gets into this new universe because somebody has mentioned it or put it on a website.
It is a night to remember and a night to shudder. It was a day that began with the president near tears saying,
I don't think there is a fancy way to say that I have sinned.
It ends with the country reading detailed charges of the president's sex acts with Monica Lewinsky.
I lived through 2 impeachments, one that I was involved in and believed was done in an appropriate constitutional manner, and then one that was done for a strictly political partisan advantage.
Politics had absolutely zero to do with the investigation. The report was detailed in the way that it was because of a conflict in testimony. The president's testimony conflicted with that of the sworn testimony of Ms. Lewinsky.
It depends upon what the meaning of the word is. Yes.
When the Starr report came out, that was probably the single most devastating day at the White House because people were scrolling through and reading this awful, awful document. Just the sheer disgust with the whole thing was kind of palpable.
A nation of laws cannot be ruled by a person who breaks the law.
A lame duck Congress is rushing to overthrow the commander-in-chief. This is surreal.
I remember when the House was voting on impeachment, and just when you didn't think something else could happen, Bob Livingston comes out.
I will not stand for Speaker of the House on...
He can't take the job, and we find out it's because he's been carrying on an affair. In a way, that Saturday, I think, settled it for the American public. Oh, what counts here? The Republicans can't find a speaker because they're all involved in affairs, and they're impeaching the president because he had this illicit relationship.
We must stop the politics of personal destruction.
The difficult days ahead would be well served by 2 elements missing up to this point. A viable political center to serve as a common ground for the extremes, and a little discretion to serve as a substitute for the feeding frenzy in a debate of this magnitude. These are sobering times, big questions. It should not be politics as usual.
I hope that I'm not just being an old fogey about this. I liked it better when they fought like hell all day long and had a drink at the end of the night and said, what do we have to do to move this country forward?
There was some very good news out of Washington and the American economy.
Budget surplus will be $39 billion this year.
That's the result of record low unemployment and the tax revenue that goes with it. 2 bombs that exploded at the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, raising troubling questions throughout the world tonight about terrorism. It is war tonight, war against Serbian President Milosevic and his military. The issue here is Kosovo, the renegade Yugoslav province where a bitter war is already underway.
There is a humanitarian reason why I believe we need to take a stand there.
Good evening tonight from the now quiet playgrounds of Littleton, Colorado, the home of an American nightmare.
This has been a great day. It's been a great American century. The future, however, lies before us now. Are you prepared to declare the Palestinian state come September?
It is not my decision.
At least 6 American sailors are dead after what intelligence experts say was a well-planned terrorist bombing that ripped a 20 by 40-foot hole in the USS Cole. First man to 270 electoral votes wins.
Tom, this is the answer.
NBC News projects Al Gore wins the state of Florida. What the networks giveth, the networks taketh away. George Bush is the president-elect of the United States. He has won the state of Florida. All right, we're officially saying that Florida is too close to call. We don't just have egg in our face, we've got omelet all over our suits. It does appear that this election has come to an end as a result of an intervention by the U.S. Supreme Court. President Clinton is going out of office with an approval rate of 64%. That says the country likes what he's been doing.
Maybe so, but he's not going to be the president on January the 20th. I am.
Later on in all... We continue with Tom Brokaw, Eyewitness to History.
I think the single most difficult day I'll ever have in this business was 9/11. It was so appalling in so many ways.
I'm up on the 81st floor of 2 World Trade. What I saw was the biggest aircraft ever bearing down towards me. Eye contact.
Boom, boom. There was the distinct 2 noises right after one another, and in an instant, our room just fell apart.
The World Trade Center is on fire.
As I was looking up, all of a sudden I realized that it wasn't debris that I was seeing, but it was a man who was jumping out of the 103rd floor. And I stopped and waited and watched him come all the way to the ground. At that point, I realized this is way beyond anything we had ever handled in the past.
The country was simply unprepared for the idea that we would be attacked here, even though all the signs were out there when you play the tape back in your own mind.
One of my friends called. She said, "Marion, please tell me Dave's home with you." And I said, "No, I think he's there." She said, "What would he be doing right now?" And I said, "He'd be running into the building, and he'd be saving people."
The only people who were there were the firefighters and the cops and the EMS workers. These people were cheering us along. These good men were telling us to run to safety.
All of a sudden, this thing started to dissolve into its own dust.
You could see a cloud beginning to... It was the... I can't even describe this. I mean, it was the most eerie feeling. It was like the Grim Reaper coming through the streets.
I couldn't believe it. And I knew then he was killed.
Terrible day.
We were launched into a wilderness that we had not been in ever. And just by the nature of where I am, I find myself kind of out front trying to help people get through the wilderness.
It is one of the darkest days in America as we realize that this country has been attacked in an act of terrorist war in the heart of the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., and also in New York City, and then a plane that was driven into the ground outside of Pittsburgh. We believe that that is the end of the attacks for now, but no one is sure because we don't know who is responsible.
My emotions are pretty close to the surface. And that day, I remember thinking, don't lose control. The one time when I thought I would lose it is when I had a man on the phone describing people who were confined to wheelchairs high up in one of the towers.
There were invalids, you know, they couldn't get out the wheelchairs.
How many people did you see like that, Mr. Knowles?
2 people.
And he started to break up.
I pray to God for the people in the wheelchairs because they couldn't get out. They were sitting there waiting for somebody to carry them down.
And the idea of that just was devastating to me.